How do you respond to abuse? The abuse could be physical, emotional, verbal, sexual, spiritual, financial. And how do you respond to it? Well, first of all, what you have to know when you're talking about how to respond to abuse is that abuse victims are usually broken down by the abuse to where they begin to question themselves, feel responsible for the abuse, think they might be causing it, continually try to figure out what they can do to prevent the abuse from happening because the abusers blame the victims for the abuse. And so they will often feel responsible for it. They will often have such low self-esteem that they'll feel like they're not worth it and maybe they deserve to be abused, or they don't have enough self-confidence to figure out how not to. They usually feel very confused by the abuse, about why it's happening and what will bring on the abuse, because abuse is often very inconsistent, which keeps the abuse victims questioning themselves. They've been told that by the abuser that their feelings, their thoughts, their perceptions, their beliefs are wrong and that the abusers are right. So they will not trust their own judgment and trust their ability to accurately perceive things and understand things to where they have the confidence to leave the relationship. So what you basically, in understanding that, and I did that more in depth in a different YouTube video, but the victims of abuse have to leave or get from that place to where they have very low self-confidence, are very confused about the abuse, might even feel that they deserve the abuse, to the place over here where they believe the opposite. And so it's how do you get from here to there? How do you figure out how to respond to the abuse? Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to recognize abuse. If you don't know that you're being abused, you're not going to ever, be able to say, I'm not willing to take this abuse. So the first thing is the light goes on. This isn't healthy. This isn't normal. And this is an abusive relationship. How does that happen? By learning about abuse, reading about it. What is abuse? Watch other YouTube videos. What is abuse? What are some examples of how abuse is occurring in my relationship? What's the dynamic in this relationship with this person and the abuse that's going on? Then get to the point where you feel strongly that the abuse isn't okay. Now, just recognizing it, you can get to where three ways. You can go to a professional counselor who hopefully will understand abuse and be able to identify it. Not always the case. You can read about it. There's excellent materials that you can buy. There's other YouTube videos, lots of articles on the internet where you can learn about what characteristics of abuse and different types of abuse. And then you can also talk to somebody who can give you support, like a friend or a family member who can say, yeah, that's not normal. That sounds abusive to me. So again, you have to recognize the abuse by identifying what is happening in your relationship. Then you have to figure out how to get improved self-esteem, self-respect, where you believe that you don't deserve the abuse and that you are not causing it. It's not your fault, that it's not okay. So by that often takes maybe an empowerment program that you get into, seeing a counselor, spending some time in some type of a support group that will help you to build up your self-esteem and help you come to that point where you really believe, I don't deserve this abuse. So the other thing is you get to the point where you don't minimize it, where you are willing to admit this is really abusive, this is really bad, and I don't want to stay in it. If you have children, getting to the point where you really believe that it's not good for the children to see you being abused, or if the children are being abused, that it's your responsibility to take good care of your children, even if it means leaving a relationship, and that you need to get your children out of the abuse. So now how do you respond to it in the meantime if you're living with the abuse? Well, first of all, physical abuse is life-threatening to you. Emotional and verbal abuse and all the other types of abuse, they hurt, they hurt you emotionally, they're painful, they break you down, but they can't physically kill you. So you got to be really careful if you're dealing with any type of physical abuse. You never want to do anything that causes an abuser to hurt you physically. So if that is a problem, then you need to be very, very careful how you respond to it. And you can always call 911 and get the police to come out if there's physical violence, if you feel threatened that there could be physical violence, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if something was broken, if you're trying to get documentation for the court that abuse is happening, if things are thrown and broken, it's a good idea to get that documented. But again, the abuser is not going to be happy that you call the police, so you have to take that into consideration. And again, safety first. Protect yourself physically first. And as far as leaving an abusive relationship, if there's physical abuse, that's a very dangerous time, because abusers will often escalate the violence when they feel that they're losing control. The violence intensifies, and the punishment for you daring to get to the point that you leave. So usually takes professional help, support program, abuse, like a women's shelter, or a counselor, or for the police department, get some type of input as to how to do that. You want to always have a bag in your car prepared and ready to go, or maybe a hidden key to the car, or at a friend's house, you keep copies of valuable papers, maybe a couple days of clothing, some cash, whatever you would need if you needed to leave quickly, that you would have the basic things that you needed in order to be able to get away. Now, if you're planning to leave, you can always call the police to come out and watch you, protect you as you gather your stuff together to leave the house. And you could ask a family member if that's somebody that would be able to, intimidate the abuser to the point where there wouldn't be violence in front of that person. But if you're in the relationship, it's verbal and emotional, or you're figuring out, how do I respond to that? There are some things that you can do. You can always leave a room. You don't have to stand there and let somebody yell at you, scream at you, put you down, call you names, argue with you. You don't have to defend yourself. Defending yourself verbally in an abusive relationship doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because the abuser doesn't care about resolving the conflict or the problems. The abuser does not care what you thought, what you meant, why you did something, what you're feeling, doesn't want to hear your side. There isn't a desire to fix this and resolve it like there is in a healthy relationship. So defending yourself wears you out, makes you tired, and you may seem like, well, I'm going to defend myself when I'm accused of something, or I'm going to explain myself. As long as you do that, you're going to feel like you are stuck in the relationship, because you're going to believe if only you can just explain it right, the abuser will get it. If you can just figure out how to make the abuser see that the treatment of you is wrong, and that if only there will be understanding, things will get resolved. And because the abuser does not want that and is not looking for that, you will never get that in your abusive relationship unless the abuser goes to get help and changes the whole belief system that perpetuates the abuse. So not explaining yourself, not defending yourself, it just wears you down. You might want to not share your feelings and make yourself vulnerable, because the abuser will take your feelings. And there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about throwing your pearls before swine. And I think about that with abuse, because if you're sharing your heart and you're sharing about you, and it's something precious about you, and the abuser is just slapping it down and making fun of it and making light of it and uses it against you, that's like you taking your precious pearls and throwing them into a pig trough when the pigs are eating their pig slop and rolling around in the mud with your beautiful pearls. Don't do it. The next thing is to protect yourself and the children. I mean, you have to know that you have a right to do that in abusive relationships, and whatever that takes. And again, safety first. You want to learn how to value yourself. Now, this is really important, because when your self-esteem is low and you don't think you matter, you're not going to have an incentive or a belief that you should get out of abuse or that you shouldn't tolerate abuse. So you have to learn to take care of yourself and value you first. You got to do whatever it takes to protect yourself and take care of yourself emotionally, get support so that you can be built up, maybe go get some schooling, some education, better yourself, make yourself look nice so that you feel good about who you are and how you look, and spend time with people who value you. So you begin to take care of yourself. And it could be small things. It could be buying yourself a small treat. It could be taking a walk every day. It could be working out at the gym. It could be taking a bath or reading a book, taking time for you. Begin to do things that have to do with taking care of yourself. Then you have to learn how to detach from the abuse so you recognize it's not about you. You're not causing the abuser to abuse you, even though you might be told that, because the abuse comes from within the abuser. So you have to know, I'm not causing this. This is not about me. I've got to separate myself emotionally and look at this person and see this person not as the person I love, not as my spouse, not as my parent, not as my sibling, but as a person who is willing to hurt me, willing to abuse me, willing to have power over me and not value me. And when you get to the point where you can detach from that, it will help you make a healthy decision. Then you also need to learn how to validate yourself. And what does that mean? That means you have to get to the point where you don't believe the abuser when the abuser says what you think and feel and want and need and perceive is wrong. You have to know, if I feel it, I feel it. My feelings are mine. They're not right. They're not wrong. It's just what I feel. You have to know that your thoughts are yours. Nobody needs to approve them. They're just your thoughts, your perception, the way something happened, what you experienced, how you perceived it is yours. Somebody else can't say, well, that was wrong. All they can say is, I experienced that differently than you, but it doesn't mean that you're wrong. And then you have to believe that you have a right to your opinions and you have a right to your needs. If you need something, you need it. You don't need somebody else's approval for you to say, I need that, or I want that, or I like this, or I don't like that. So you have to get to the point where you can say, I can validate myself. I'm okay. Then you want to seek other people to evaluate you. Sometimes it requires outside validation. When I was in that abusive relationship, I would often call people and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what was said. This is what I said. This is what I did. This is what he did. Am I crazy? Does that make sense? Would you have responded like that? Because then I began to, when I heard more and more people say, yes, I would do that. That makes sense. That's not right. Then I began to trust my own feelings and my own opinions and my own perceptions. So you want to work on building your self-esteem so you get to the point where you can set boundaries. And that means that you're going to build up, again, self-respect and feeling good about yourself and having confidence. And that's a process. And that takes deliberate effort on your part. So what can you say basically to someone in an abusive relationship rather than defending yourself? If it's safe, one of the ways that you can respond to abuse is you can say to the abuser, and again, you want to identify what the abuse is and then like specific things that are being done. And I did another YouTube video on that. So you want to say, for instance, stop belittling me. That's belittling. Stop belittling me. If it's safe, not if you're going to get hit, you don't want to do that, but stop belittling me. That's ridicule. Don't ridicule me. That's undermining. Don't undermine me. Now, if you have somebody who is going to respond in a very, abusive way to that, and the person might ridicule you and say, oh, look at you. You're so tough. You can tell me now what to do. You're crazy. You're not going to tell me what to do. That's okay, because you've tried, and now you know that even when you set a boundary and you say, don't do that, that the abuser doesn't respect that. That's learning something. You're learning that even setting a boundary, which even getting to that place for an abused victim is really hard. But if you get to that place and that abuser still says that to me or to you, you can know that that's a sign that right now there is no willingness to stop the abuse, and you're going to definitely need to get help or get out. So if you basically respond to it like that, that is helpful. And you can also set boundaries, like I won't talk to you when you're yelling at me. I won't stay in the room. I won't tell you what's going on in my life if you put me down. I won't give you my check if you're going to take it and prevent me from having any access to the money. So that's a boundary that you can also set, things that you have control over. So getting to that point, that midpoint where you're saying no to the abuse in the relationship is something you can do before you get to the point where you say, I'm going to leave the relationship if the abuse continues. So you have those different levels and those ways of responding to abuse. I hope that's helped you. There's a lot of information on the internet. I've got some other YouTube videos on abuse. I have a book called 10 Life-Saving Principles for Women in Difficult Marriages. And When Love Hurts, 10 Principles to Transform Difficult Relationships is written to men and women. So if you're struggling with abuse, that gives you very specific principles to apply to your relationship that will help you strengthen your self-image, your self-esteem, help you set boundaries, help you to speak the truth, help you to face fear, because it's hard to leave a relationship or to set a boundary when you're feeling fear. So there's a lot of things that you can read and study guides and things I have in audios. So go ahead and check out my relationship at changemyrelationship.com. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Got an email that you can write and ask me questions, and I can, give you some feedback, which would probably really be helpful. So thanks again for watching this video on Change My Relationship.